He was supposed to uphold the law, but instead, he became the face of one of the most disturbing cases in American police history. A respected officer. A quiet town. And then, 3 people end up dead. What pushed from decorated cop to convicted killer? The truth is darker than anyone imagined: corruption, betrayal, and a mental breakdown that no one saw coming. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see justice in small-town America forever. March 3, 2003, 8 a.m. It was a regular Monday morning in the small town of Clearwater, Louisiana. People were rushing off to work and school. The streets were alive with the usual chatter, honking cars, and the smell of coffee from the local diner. Then, gunshots. Panic broke out instantly. The sound was coming straight from the Clearwater Police Department. First one shot, then 2, then a third. People nearby froze in place, expecting to see officers subduing a criminal. But what they saw instead was something that would haunt this town forever. Police officers ran out of the station, screaming. The shooter wasn't a terrorist. He wasn't a thug. He was one of their own. The man behind the trigger was Sergeant Frank Bellamy, a well-respected traffic officer. He calmly pulled his service weapon from his belt and gunned down 3 of his fellow officers inside the department, without hesitation or a word. Frank wasn't known to have any mental health issues. He was quiet, disciplined, and always on time. No one ever imagined he was capable of something like this. But behind the badge, Frank was carrying a storm no one saw coming. This isn't just a story about murder. It's a story about how debt, corruption, and desperation can eat away at a man's soul. Frank Bellamy had a clean record on the surface. Married, father of 3, working traffic duty downtown. He spent most of his days writing tickets in the Eastwood District, an area known for construction zones and speeding violations. From the outside, it looked like he was just doing his job. But behind the scenes, Frank was drowning. He had taken out multiple payday loans, all with crushing interest rates. His monthly paycheck wasn't enough to keep up. That's when things started to spiral. To make ends meet, Frank began taking small bribes. Drivers would slip him a 20, a 50, sometimes 100 to avoid tickets, and he took it. He wasn't proud of it, but in his words, it was the only way to survive. At first, it was quiet. No one noticed. But over time, his fellow officers grew suspicious. Whispers started. One of them finally reported him to the station chief, Captain Dwight Monroe. Monroe didn't report it. He made an offer instead. If you want to keep working that money spot downtown, Monroe told him, you give me $150 a month under the table. You pay me, and I'll keep you right where the money flows. Frank agreed. He had no choice. The debt collectors were calling, the bank was threatening foreclosure, and his wife was barely holding things together at home. But soon, even the bribe money wasn't enough. Frank couldn't keep up, not with the loans, the bills, and now paying off his own captain. One day, he walked into Monroe's office and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. No more bribes. No more money. Monroe smirked. You think you get to quit, he said. If you won't pay, I'll bury you. I'll have you reassigned to a dead zone. And that's exactly what he did. Within days, Frank was transferred to a lifeless street on the south edge of town, a dead-end construction road with almost no traffic. No tickets. No bribes. Just sun, silence, and nothing to do. He sat there for hours each day, staring out at nothing, boiling inside. And that's when the darkness really began to grow. Frank Bellamy wasn't just angry, he was isolated. He didn't get along with most of the officers at Clearwater PD, nearly 80% of them avoided him. He wasn't the type to make small talk or grab coffee after shifts. He kept to himself. The few who did know him described him as bitter, tense, and on edge. Things got worse when a few of those officers, the ones Frank couldn't stand, were moved into the very traffic zone he had been kicked out of. Now they were working the busy money-making strip downtown, and he was stuck alone on a dead-end road with barely a car passing by all day. It felt personal. Frank was convinced his captain had betrayed him, taken everything from him, and handed it over to those he hated most. At home, it wasn't any better. His marriage was crumbling under the pressure. The debts kept piling up. His wife was angry. The kids needed things he couldn't afford. The walls were closing in. Frank started to break. He couldn't sleep. Night after night, he lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking the same dark thoughts over and over. There's only one way out of this. One night, something snapped. Frank Bellamy, 46 years old, father of 3, veteran officer, made a decision. He wasn't going to live like this anymore. The next morning, he got up earlier than usual. He arrived at the station before anyone else. He entered through the side door, walked down the hall with a blank stare, and waited inside his office. In his coat pocket was his service weapon. And in his mind was a hit list. He was waiting for them, the ones who had taken everything from him. The officers who, in his eyes, ruined his career, his family, and his life. The first to enter was Detective Sam Fuller, one of the 3 officers Frank resented most. As soon as Sam stepped into the office, Frank drew his weapon and fired. A single shot to the chest. Sam collapsed instantly. The second was Officer Rick Hammond. He rushed in after hearing the gunshot. Frank didn't hesitate. Another shot rang out, Rick dropped to the floor. There was no panic in Frank's face. He was calm, collected. Almost satisfied. He believed every shot was justice. Then came Sergeant David Booker, the 3rd man on Frank's list. David had no idea what was waiting behind the door. As soon as he entered, Frank turned, aimed, and shot him 3 times. David didn't stand a chance. Blood now stained the walls of the station. Screams echoed. Officers began to flee the building, not knowing who was shooting or why. But Frank wasn't finished. He was waiting for one more person, Captain Dwight Monroe. In Frank's mind, Monroe was the true villain. The one who took bribes, made threats, and ruined Frank's career. He was the one who deserved to die the most. Frank dialed his number. "You need to come down here," he told Monroe coldly. "Something's happened. You need to see it for yourself." But Monroe was cautious. "I'm tied up." "I'll be there when I can," he replied. Frank hung up and sat quietly in the blood-soaked office, waiting. He had locked the door behind him, gun in hand, eyes fixed on the hallway. Outside, sirens began to wail. Dozens of officers and tactical units surrounded the building. News vans were arriving. Word was spreading fast, an active shooter inside Clearwater PD. Inside, time moved differently. Every second felt like an hour. Frank sat motionless, waiting for the man he blamed for everything. And he was ready to finish what he started. By now, the streets outside the Clearwater Police Department were in chaos. Crowds had gathered, police had set up barricades, and no one was allowed near the building. Officers who had escaped the station confirmed the nightmare. "It's Frank Bellamy. He's the shooter. He's killed officers inside." No one knew exactly how many were dead, but they all feared the worst. Word spread like wildfire through the town, and panic grew by the minute. The command was clear. No one enters the station. Not even SWAT. They didn't want to risk more bloodshed, not until they found a peaceful way to disarm Frank. Inside, Frank could hear the sirens and the police cars pulling up. He heard shouting, radios blaring, and footsteps rushing outside. He knew what this meant: Captain Monroe wasn't coming. And without Monroe, the whole plan was falling apart. That's when the pressure hit. Frank cracked. He screamed. He cried. He pounded his fists against the wall. For a moment, he looked like a man completely consumed by grief, rage, and hopelessness, all at once. He stepped into the hallway, still holding the gun, and began yelling out a name: Zach. Zach Reynolds. Zach was Frank's oldest and closest friend on the force. A good man. One of the very few he trusted. He shouted Zach's name again and again. The officers outside heard him. They knew who Zach was. They stopped him from going in, but Zach pushed back. "Let me go in," Zach pleaded. "If he's calling for me, he's looking for someone to talk to. He's done. He's ready to give up." They hesitated. But it was clear, Frank wasn't going to surrender to just anyone. He wanted Zach. The brass agreed. This might be the only shot they had at ending this without more death. Zach raised both hands and walked slowly through the front doors. The halls were quiet. The air heavy with dread. He rounded the corner, and saw Frank. Frank was pale, trembling, blood on his shirt. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he had just come back from war. He was holding the gun low, not aimed, but still gripped tightly. Zach raised his hands higher. "Frank, what the hell did you do, man?" Frank didn't answer. He stared at Zach for a long moment, then slowly lowered the gun and placed it on the floor. The moment the weapon hit the ground, Zach stepped forward, pulled out his cuffs, and without a word, placed them on his best friend's wrists. Frank didn't resist. He didn't speak. He kept his eyes on the floor as Zach led him outside. The crowd outside erupted. Some were yelling for the death penalty, some were just crying, others filming with their phones. Officers surrounded him, guns raised, but didn't shoot. Zach kept him safe all the way to the cruiser. Inside, a silence fell over the department. Investigators swarmed the building, and what they found confirmed the worst. 3 officers dead. Shot at close range. In cold blood. That afternoon, Frank Bellamy was booked for triple homicide, one of the most shocking cases of internal police violence in state history. At his first interrogation, the question came fast. "Why did you do it, Frank?" And slowly, he began to talk. "I took bribes. A lot of them," he confessed. "Started small, 20s, 50s, just enough to pay the loans. But it grew. The money made it easy to borrow more. I started drowning. Couldn't stop." He admitted to letting people off with warnings in exchange for cash. "Tickets? No. I took the money and let them go." Then came the bombshell. "I wasn't the only one," Frank said. "The ones I shot? They were in it too. And Monroe? He knew everything. He took his cut. Told me to give him $150 a month or he'd ruin me. At first, I agreed to give him $100. But later, reality hit me hard. I was drowning in debt, car payments, overdue bills, rent, and those little bribes I used to take each month barely covered groceries. I was just surviving. So one day, I told him straight, 'You're not getting another damn cent from me.' After that, everything changed. He told everyone that since I stopped paying up, the precinct captain would reassign me, move me out of downtown, where the real action is, and dump me in some dead-end zone in East Bricktown. A quiet neighborhood. No traffic, no crime, just me standing around all day like a fool, writing parking tickets, pulling in nothing. You could see it all over my face. I was defeated. I felt useless. And while I was getting screwed, those other 3 cops, the ones I used to work with, took my old spot and started splitting the dirty money between them. They destroyed my life. They took away my position, my pride. I couldn't afford rent, my wife left me, my kids needed food and clothes, and I had nothing left. No hope. Just this black hole that kept getting deeper. I had 3 kids. I was supposed to be a man, provide for my family. But I couldn't even look them in the eyes. And while I suffered in silence, they thrived. That pressure, it built up until I cracked. I kept hearing the laughter. Them bragging. Riding nice cars. While I was standing alone in a corner of a forgotten neighborhood. The detectives noticed I was shaking, sweating as I spoke. My voice cracked, then rose, then exploded. I told them everything. How my mental health was collapsing. How the guilt and anger consumed me. But no one, my wife, my brother, no one in my family, ever checked on me. Not even when they heard about the murders. The next day, the whole state of Oklahoma was talking about it. An officer murdered 3 of his fellow cops. It was all over the news, but no one knew why. Families of the victims demanded the death penalty. The public followed the story closely, desperate for answers. During the interrogation, the investigators pressed me. This can't be the only reason you killed them. It's not enough. But I told them, that's all there is. I'm not hiring a lawyer. Do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. They decided to send me for a psychiatric evaluation, thinking maybe I had some mental disorder. A week later, the report came back. I was fully sane. No disorder. No excuses. I knew exactly what I was doing when I pulled that trigger. It chilled them. I had committed cold-blooded murder, not out of insanity, but out of anger and despair, because of corruption. Because of greed. Because of dirty money. I told them, this is what corruption does. It rots everything. It killed my soul before I killed anyone else. And I want you to open every single file on bribery in this department. Let the truth come out. At trial, I said the same thing. I don't want a lawyer. Just sentence me. I killed 3 people, and I deserve what's coming. The DA charged me with 3 counts of first-degree murder, unlawful possession and use of a firearm, and endangering public safety. The courtroom was packed with families of the victims. They all demanded justice. They wanted me dead. Even Sawyer, the reporter who once had my back, showed up that day. Over the weeks, detectives and psychologists agreed on one thing: Nathan was not insane. No clinical disorder, no history of delusions, he was mentally competent. But month after month, the pressure built. Everyone close to him noticed the shift. He was cracking. The breaking point came after he was transferred from his post in a high-crime precinct, where he had grown used to bribes, fast-paced action, and street power, to a quiet, dead-end town station where nothing ever happened. No movement. No deals. Just silence. That transfer crushed him. His friend Sawyer told the court, he just couldn't handle it. The pressure. The silence. Nathan wasn't a bad man, but he made a horrible choice. The court was not lenient. They were convinced Nathan Foster knew exactly what he was doing. He planned the murders and carried them out with full awareness. The judge handed down the harshest sentence, death. Everyone knew that executions were rare. In that state, the last one had taken place decades ago. Still, the sentence was final. When the verdict was read, Nathan didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He didn't argue. He just stood there, stoic, and nodded. He had accepted it. As he was escorted out of the courtroom, he made one quiet request. "When I die, please bury me next to my father." He was the only one I ever truly respected. In prison, Nathan was placed in solitary confinement. The wardens were afraid he might harm himself or someone else. No cellmate. No conversations. Food trays were slid through a slot. No visitors. Not even his wife, not his siblings, not a single friend came to see him. The man had become a ghost. Year after year passed. Then came the morning of February 3, 2017. A guard named Mitchell knocked on his cell door. No answer. He knocked again. Then again. Still no sound. Mitchell opened the viewing hatch and saw Nathan lying on his cot, motionless, mouth slightly open, eyes turned upward. He called for backup and a medic. They rushed him to the infirmary. But it was too late. Nathan Foster's heart had stopped. The coroner's report showed no toxins, no wounds, no sign of suicide. He hadn't taken pills or hung himself. The official cause of death? Cardiac arrest due to extreme psychological stress. Nathan Foster had died from his own mind, his guilt, his anxiety, and the crushing loneliness had finally shut his body down. Later that day, as the guards cleaned his cell, one of them lifted his pillow and found a folded note underneath. It was a farewell letter. In his shaky handwriting, he wrote, "I'm not a martyr. I'm not a monster. I'm just a man who broke under too much weight. If you ever find me dead in here, never forgive the corruption. Because that's what really killed me." Nathan Foster was buried quietly in a small cemetery in western Kentucky, next to his father's grave. Only 2 officers attended. No family. No press. No ceremony. And so ended one of the strangest and most tragic cases to ever shake the American law enforcement system.